If during the war someone criticizes and calls for how to change your government as soon as possible, it's either an enemy, or an accomplice of an enemy, or an idiot, which is sometimes worse than an accomplice.
There is a leader there, and I personally like him, everything is in order. But I personally don't care. I care about doing my job.
Hello, my name is Kateryna Soliar, and there will be no usual countdown of time. Because here is a vacuum where only one time is frozen 24 hours left. During which Trump once again says that the war would not have started under him. That we should not participate in the war. And, where's the money? 160. No, 300. No, $350 billion. Willy-nilly, you remember SHPAC and the tape recorder from the film, Ivan Vasilyevich changes profession, and the number of cigarette cases changed every time this story was told to another listener. And if we have already started with Trump's press conference and the question, where's the money, let's continue with it. Once again and briefly, Trump cites the figure of $350 billion, which, according to his personal estimate, the United States provided to Ukraine. And demands that we either pay the bills or find this money, saying that last week President Zelenskyy told him that he did not know where these funds went. And this is not surprising, because Ukraine has never seen such money. Let me remind you that this is the third figure that Trump calls. First it was 160, then 300, then 500 billion. And the official figure, according to the Pentagon, as of mid-January at the beginning of the reign of the previous administration of Joe Biden, that is, January 2021, was $66.5 billion for security assistance to Ukraine. According to these Pentagon data, the total assistance of the 50 countries of the Ramstein Group, which includes European NATO countries, has allocated more than $126 billion to support Ukraine's security since its first meeting at the Ramstein Air Base in April 2022. In the language of numbers, the war cost Ukraine the most in every sense of the word, because it paid for it not only with money and lives, which Trump loves to speculate on. In total, the war cost Ukraine $320 billion, of which $120 billion was paid by Ukrainians, and another $200 billion was paid by the United States and Europe. All previous delegations that came to Ukraine from the United States confirmed that they had no questions about where and how the money and equipment were spent. By the way, how it works, Keith Kellogg can see in person. He has just arrived in Ukraine on a 3-day visit, and President Zelenskyy said that he would be happy to go with him to the front. Although Kellogg has just arrived, I already have the feeling that he has been assigned to us, you know, as a kindergarten teacher, while adult uncles at the table solve important problems. Uncles are indeed adults of retirement age, but you see, they don't want to drink juice somewhere on the beach, everyone wants to decide fate. But does this mean that after Kellogg's visit, the speculation will end? Of course not. Because Trump said that Ukraine should not have started defending itself. It turns out that Russia is a victim. So I see this picture in front of my eyes, where Donald Trump, who was a cameo in the movie Home Alone, tells Kevin why you attacked 2 hefty men. At the same time, claiming that one of those hefty men, that is, Russia, if it wants, can very quickly destroy 100% of the cities of Ukraine, including Kyiv. It's just that he doesn't want to do it yet. Of course, it can. They have a nuclear weapon, let me remind you. And you took ours. So that we cannot give change in this case. So that everything is honest, so to speak. Then they gave us long-range missiles, but they were not allowed to hit them. We probably had to use them as bat balls to deflect bullets.
To date, if you look and analyze some materials that appear in various think tanks and, shall we say, organizations, who may form a certain opinion, including among representatives of the Republican Party or the administration of the President of the United States, there are certain narratives that, they say, Russia is still strong, that Russia has capabilities, that Russia has the capacity and that, in general, it seems that it is not fighting there at full strength against Ukraine. But if they wanted, it would really be what President Trump is saying now, that they could actually wipe Kyiv off the face of the earth and so on. In general, if we analyze and see the state of affairs, but the question arises. And tell me, please, does anyone really think that Putin would not want to destroy Ukrainian cities? You just need to look at those cities that are constantly shelled. At Kherson, at Kharkiv, how much destruction Sumy region, and Donetsk region have suffered. Wherever the enemy advanced, they wiped everything off the face of the earth. They leave behind nothing, in fact. And they are absolutely indifferent to the fact that people have lived here, or are ever planning to live. They are absolutely indifferent to civilians. Moreover, it is possible to inform even about the Kursk region. That Putin does not feel sorry for his citizens. After all, he wipes out Sudra and nearby settlements, which are now controlled by Ukrainian troops, from the face of the earth.
And Putin immediately fluffed up his tail and let's show his yars to everyone on a combat patrol in Novosibirsk. If you haven't heard about nuclear blackmail for a long time, then it hasn't disappeared anywhere. This is a missile, I remind you again, designed to deliver nuclear warheads with a flight or launch range exceeding 11,000 kilometers. And why? Because Russia wants to stop this savage barbarism. Its soldiers are being killed by the thousands. Every week, Trump says. Therefore, Trump is rushing to Putin's aid. Once again, by the way, because it has already happened, as military expert Yigal Levin recalled. The United States constantly saved Russia from the famine in 1891 to 1892, then from the Nazis in 1941 to 45, again from hunger and devastation in 91. Bush's legs, remember? And so seeing Russia's helplessness before the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria, and Trump probably took it as a wake-up call because it may be too late. Against the backdrop of these devastated Soviet warehouses, understaffed regiments, meat assaults for the sake of another village, donkeys at the front, complete dependence on the DPRK in shells and new artillery, the inability of air defense and the Russian fleet to solve problems, the Americans understand that, perhaps, it will be more expensive for Russia to save it for another year. Just like in Ayvazovsky's painting, The Distribution of American Food in Starving Russia in 1892. This could be called a conspiracy theory that has nothing to do with reality. But Trump himself said that if the war is not stopped, there will be a catastrophe with Russia and its economy. It was literally said by him in words through his mouth. And in order to prevent this, Trump began to speculate on elections in Ukraine. He says Zelensky's support rating is 4%. And if Ukraine wants to participate in negotiations, it must hold elections. He also says that he is disappointed with Zelensky's complaints that Ukraine was not invited to talks in Riyadh. You had 3 years to do it. We are also disappointed that you are so easily led by the Russian narrative. But we must admit that in 2014 we also could not watch Russia won for a long time, because after 5 minutes I began to doubt my rightness, and after 15 minutes I was ready to believe that Putin was a peacemaker. Then we were cured of this disease. And you also can. So what does it mean that Ukraine has had 3 years? First, the war is not over yet. And Russia demonstrates this every night. Therefore, I would not stop counting down to 3 years, but even better remember the previous years and your administration, including the seizure of Crimea and Donbas. And secondly, we have been manipulated so often and for so long that we already, have immunity. And once again, I am not calling here to vote for Zelensky, against Zelensky. Vote for whoever you want when the time comes. Although for Arestovich, it is better not for Arestovich. But if Trump really has questions, then let him comment on the elections in Belarus and Russia. And I'll name the real numbers for now. 57% of Ukrainians trust Zelensky, and this is what KIIS says. As of the first half of February 2025, 37% of respondents do not trust the President of Ukraine, and the trust-distrust balance is plus 20%. Compared to December 2024, when trust was at 52% and distrust was at 39%, the indicator has improved. At that time, the balance of trust and distrust was 13%. That is, once again, Zelensky's rating is 4% higher than Donald Trump's rating in America. But that's not even the question. It is obvious that the new US administration saving Russia sees obstacles in Ukraine. He especially sees it in Zelensky. Because everything that happens, and this is the Great War, it goes against all previous forecasts. We had no weapons, but we withstood the first 3 days and the first 3 months. We were given a pittance, we endured another year. The list of promises grew, we kept fighting. We were not given everything at once in the wrong quality, but we are here on our land both in 2025 and in 2024 and in 2023. And in 2022, let me remind you, Ukraine was simply given to the Russian Federation for food, hoping that it would swallow us and moderate its appetites for a while. However, we had other plans. This is a war contrary, not according to plan. And this is what is annoying the American leadership now.
Now Ukraine and its leadership need maximum strength. Firstly, do not follow the lead of either the United States or anyone. As Moshe Dayan said, the Americans offer us money, weapons and advice. We take money and weapons, but we refuse advice. This is the same Moshe Dayan who was in the top of the Israeli army back when the United States imposed an arms embargo on this very Israel in the 40s and 50s. Dayan knew this bunch well. Ukraine can say a big thank you to the Americans for the assistance already provided and politely note that it does not need advice. It will decide for itself how to fight, whom and when to choose, and what to do with Russia. Secondly, Ukrainian society needs to rally around its power, its state and its army. It's one thing when the Russians want to separate you, it's clear, they're enemies. But it's a completely different matter when partners want to separate you. And these statements of Trump cannot be interpreted in any other way.
And we still need to unite with you, and not because we love or dislike the government or the state together, but because we do not have another. If we lose it now, it will never be again. Therefore, here it becomes obvious that we are unlikely to agree to their peace, so we are probably waiting for a long war or loss of independence. The level of unpredictability increased to February 2022. We hold on, or as Kirilo Budanov says, we will survive. In the meantime, even former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson seems shocked by the statements of his friend and comrade. However, in his opinion, Trump's latest statements are still needed to motivate Europe to act. And I have already told you about this once, that if Trump wants to wake up and push Europe to take more action in this way, then he succeeds.
Of course, a country that is subjected to a violent invasion should not hold elections. There was no general election in the United Kingdom from 1935 to 1945.
Of course, Zelenskyy's ratings are not 4% as Boris Johnson writes. In fact, they are about the same as Trump's, and maybe even higher. However, in his opinion, Trump's statements are not intended to be historically accurate, but should shock Europeans and encourage them to act. And he succeeds. Johnson also mentioned $300 billion, perhaps it was Trump who meant them, so they did not give us, let me remind you, frozen Russian assets mainly in Belgium.
This is money that can and should be used to pay Ukraine and compensate the United States for their support. The United States believes that Belgium, France and other countries are blocking. This is absurd. We need to act seriously and quickly.
And it is no coincidence that Donald Trump makes a huge number of rapid decisions. According to the Russian service of the BBC, the US president is doing this to spontaneousize his opponents and weaken their reaction. This behavior fits perfectly into the zone congestion strategy used in American football. And this is far from the only trick of Donald Trump. For example, fill the fields with any waste product of the body. This is how former Trump chief advisor Steve Bannon describes this tactic. The point is to create such a volume of information, scandals and distracting noise so that critics do not have time to rally around a single narrative. Next is Friday's face-off. Note that controversial decisions are often announced by the end of the week, and by Monday they simply disappear from the agenda. This was the case, for example, with the appointment of former TV presenter Pete Hegseth to the post of U.S. Secretary of Defense. Another tactic is constant chaos. And we have definitely noticed this. Analysts are sure that the tactic may alienate Trump's most loyal supporters, but so far everything that allows him to dominate the media and keep opponents in constant tension. Well, we are tense, angry, irritated, but certainly not conquered. As I understand it, it was a warning. By Friday, there will be even wilder statements. We prepare and keep the brain cold. Because the countdown of 24 hours that left has already begun.